Blonde is one of the great albums of its generation. But I
Yeah.
think that what Frank did in finessing or trolling or screwing the label is also held up as like there. He also did this amazing thing of screwing the
He did.
label the
No, he
same way.
did.
I'ma get $1 million in the bank.
Let me turn you a little bit because we got something new and exciting. A Frank Ocean snippet.
Think your love's a mirage, always in the distance. I read your diary every line.
If you told me he was never going to come out again, I would believe that. So to see it is like a glimmer of light in the dark. This is one of the most important artists of our time. So I'm excited. Anthony, talk about what new Frank might mean to you.
I mean, I feel like honestly, I want new music and I want it to be good, and I am looking forward to anything that is genuinely coming out. But I will say, like, as much as my expectations have just been kind of like shaken by the amount of time that we've all been waiting, because I do sort of like wonder at this point, like, is the heart and passion there to come out with a new record? You know, the thing, maybe he's disillusioned, which I feel like could, I wouldn't fault him for feeling that way, considering all the time that's passed, and sort of, the fact that he came at that Blonde sort of like endless double album release situation with like a distrust of the music industry to begin with. Blonde wouldn't have been released in the fashion that it was if he didn't think like, well, I love making music. I'm an artist, I care about my music, but like on some level, I believe this is all kind of bullshit, like why would you not sort of, why would you kind of like in your own way, in a smart way, in a very commendable way, kind of like, purposefully stab the label in the back, be like, okay, here's my project that people are going to pay attention less to. Here's my actual project that the fans are going to love, and I'm going to release it at the same time. Like, why would you do that? If you didn't already kind of have a certain level of skepticism, of like labels and releases and so on and so forth, So if he did feel at this point like, and it's I'm not so passionate about the potential of doing that, it would be fine, and I'm sort of wondering at this point, is his heart really into it? And I feel like what further confirmed that on some level was, what was it, the Coachella performance, where like it all just like kind of fell the fuck apart and it was like a total mess, and it was like, man, it's something's going on here, where it sort of seems like there's not a focus here that's pulling things together.
Blonde is one of the great albums of its generation. But I think that what Frank did in finessing or trolling or screwing the label is also held up as like there. He also did this amazing thing of screwing the label the same way we're like Drake lost the battle, but the lawsuit made it worse. Like the flipping off of Def Jam made the whole album even like made the. It's like part of Frank's image of like he screws the label also.
Mm-hmm. He's counterculture. It's like it gives him more credibility, and it's part of the reason why I listened to it so intently, because I heard the first one and I was like, this is garbage, like with an H, and then I listened to Blonde so intently because I was like, oh, he pulled okay, and I listened to it and it became one of my favorite pieces of music or art that I've ever heard in my life. So that's a very interesting. He's in a very interesting space.
Listen, if he comes out with a new record and it's like incredible, which like fingers crossed that it is, like he'd be pulling off like a D'Angelo times 2 in terms of like, disappearing and then coming back and just like incredible comeback record, like really keeping true to his artistry, and so on and so forth.
The snippet suggests to me we're in the same sort of zone that we were on Blonde, right? It's a 34-second bit, but it seems like same sort of tempo, same sort of instrumentation, same sort of melancholy feel. And I expect someone as brilliant as him to develop in his own artistic way. Blonde is very much about childhood, right? And growing out of childhood and the wistfulness of like losing childhood or the youthful part of your life. And it kind of reminds me of some of the emotions that Salinger is playing with in The Catcher in the Rye. When you come back after that, what do? You can't continue to talk about.
We're speculating.
No, we're not.
He has this whole thing
You're
where he does it, where he always speculates about an album, like I like to do. Just think about what it could be, and then acts like he doesn't do that. Like it's fun to speculate. It's fun.
What? I'm not even talking to you right now. Andy, an artist who gets known for talking about childhood, like how do you move forward from there? Like I don't
it's hard to
imagine.
say. It's hard to say even known for, because we're basing that off of such a small
Mm.
slice of sort of like his life and his catalog. You know what I mean? Like I feel like so much time has passed. Like he either has to be writing about different topics, or it's going to sound forced. Like, I feel like after all this time, he can't literally come back with like the same shit, or else people are going to start immediately just comparing it to the last record. Which, like, the danger of that, being an artist who has taken so long to release as he has, is like, you know, an album like Blonde, the love of it has built is looming so large in people's minds right now that, like, you know, nothing else in that lane of that era of that style can compare, because you've let people sit with it for so long. You know, the beauty of like a 2 3 4 album release, you know, I mean, a 2 3 4 year album release cycle is like, you don't let the fans sit with the album so long that in their minds, when the next one comes out, they're already thinking, oh well, no, nothing could beat this. You know, because
Yeah.
the longer you allow people to sit on something, and the longer you allow them to wait, you know, the more you allow them to sort of like really ruminate on the project. Which, you know, it's great. It's great when people sort of like actually find the time in this day and age to sit with a project and let it grow on
How
them. You
long
know,
has
it's
it
rare that
been?
we get
10
albums.
years?
Yeah,
2016,
at least.
Wow.
2016, but yeah.
So I mean,
There's no
you know,
way
the
you can
longer you let
fight.
people sit with it, the more in their own minds are like, this can't be beat. This is like the best that he's ever going to do, or the best in this style or this thing. You know, so it sets expectations high. Which, like, the downside of that is, for some fans, unfortunately, you know, we can guarantee that regardless of how good the Frank album is, and it may be great, there's going to be some listeners that will come to that sort of with expectations set too high, and out of the gate they're going to be disappointed for no other reason other than that they've heard Blonde a million times already.
I mean, if you listen to Blonde and it shaped your experience of being in your teens or your 20s, and it was the soundtrack of that moment, and it helped you understand what was going on as you were that age and you were dealing with early relationships or your second relationship ever, nothing could ever compare, because that album was a part of your life. And
Mhm.
whatever comes along when you're 29 or 30 could never be a part of your life the way music can be when you're 15 to 25. It can
Mhm.
exist as something that really shapes your life after you're really young. It can never have that. You can love it, but it's never going to have that central place in your life as it can when you're really young, when you're 15 to 25, when you're a teenager, early adult. It can really become part of your life. And this album became part of people's lives. He can't do that again. It's not possible.
It's true, but I feel like at least we have in this specific case, in this specific time period, I feel like we have some at least somewhat analogous windows into the level of passion and hunger fans out there might have for Frank or his music at this point, because you know, he came up at the same time and with a lot of the same audience that like Tyler did, you know, and people
Mhm.
who rode for Tyler 10 years ago and really loved his music from that time period still also like really heavily fuck with his music now, you know, despite it changing as radically as it has. And in some ways it's very much the same over that course of time. And I feel like if there's still like a really sizable, and arguably his audience has grown since then, you know, and if there's like a really passionate
Frank
audience
Ocean's
out there for
definitely
what he's
has.
doing right now, I think Frank Ocean probably still has a very passionate audience out there, would love to hear what he's doing, you know, even if it does kind of hit in a different way than it did when they were teens growing up with that music.
100%, for
I
sure.
think it's different for this generation too, or his generation too, as far as the whole like music affecting you in that same way. Because I feel like this is the most concert going audience ever in the history of the world, right? Like this time period in the last probably like 5 years.
Is it?
I'm
I mean, certainly when we're comparing to COVID times, sure, you know, but I don't know
well,
if I
well,
have the
I'm talking
metrics on
about
that.
in general. Like people didn't go to concerts like that in the '80s versus versus like now as far as in the ticket sales numbers. That's just ticket sales have gone up. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
And, you know,
like
then there's like massive festival culture these days too.
exactly. So I think that also applies to the whole thing about memories and you applying your life to it. So you could be 30 and still keep on going to the clubs or going to these festivals, and this person's music means so much to you because you went with your girlfriends, you went with your boyfriend, significant other, you attach that music in that moment to your life the same way that I think, and it's formidable, which the same way I think it happens with like a 15-year-old when you really loved this person in high school and you were listening to Blonde. Now Blonde is everything. It's all your emotions that you've ever had. You attach to that. I think nowadays people can attach that now too. Just only, and this is anecdotal because this is just what I see when I see like audiences and people who are like 35 years old, but they kind of act like 15-year-olds when they come to a concert. And I feel like that didn't happen like for my parents' generation.
But also, it's just in terms of artistic subject matter, artists can always talk about childhood and the loss of childhood in any genre, and that will move people, right? People will always be like, yes, most people, my childhood was so great, and it's not like it. Things are not so simple anymore in my life. And like, yes, I know that feeling.
Or
And you
trauma.
see that movies, our albums, books, all over. There's no other time in your life that you could write about the same way, that has that same artistic focus. There is some art like Chromacopia about like, oh, I'm moving from being single to being a family person and how, but there's no other period in your life that has that same focus that he put on Blonde. So you're like, okay, so where do you go?
Parenthood isn't like that?
Say again?
Is Parenthood like that? Because I know in the art of comedy, like from a kid to a grown up, when a parent starts talking about their kids, it's just generational. So it kind of works both ways, right?
I mean, for sure, there's a ton of art about parenthood. I'm not sure if it functions the same. Like, there's this deep emotional thing about missing childhood and fearing the onset of adulthood. And I think parenthood functions a lot more complex than that.
You know, regardless, I'm also sort of like thinking about how much of you know, the appeal and success of like Nas's King Disease records, you know, we're sort of like based on nostalgia. I feel like nostalgia generally sells pretty well as long as you can like package it effectively and you as an artist, it actually sort of like elicits some kind of passion from you, you know, actually drives you to make some of your best work and gets you sort of like, you know, yapping about something that you're locked in on. You know, if that means going back to your childhood, sure. If that means going back to when you're one of the best rappers in New York, you know, and you were on everybody's lips at the time, sure, you know, then too works. You know, connecting back to a time that you're passionate about, I feel like is, you know, it can be a winning formula.
A$AP Rocky's got a new song connecting back to a moment from about 2 weeks ago that he's extremely passionate about. The song he did at Rolling Loud was called Your Honor, where he talks about Joe Tacopina, he talks about A$AP Rocky, he talks about being on trial, getting off trial. I mean, like, the whole movie that has been the A$AP Rocky trial had to conclude with like a song about it. It's a whole movie in and of itself.
Does he have a line about Drake and Kendrick in there too?
I think that's a different song.
That's a different song?
Because I know the line you're talking about, and I didn't see that I read Your Honor, the lyrics, and I didn't see that there.
Oh, okay.
Was there another song? Did he debut a second song?
There was something. I just saw the line where he was like, I'm like something like, I'm not Drake, I'm not Kendrick, I'm not.
That he's not taking sides in the battle.
Yeah, that he's not taking sides.
Yeah. They're going to see a different side. They're going to see a homicide.
Yeah.
Which is the control verse vibe of like, I'm here to murder everybody. Like, okay, great. Good. Go to it.
Right.
Hopefully, I want him to make like a great album. That's what I'm speculating on. It's like, yo, can I get a great A$AP Rocky album? You have a lot to talk about. So that's not missing. You are also highly capable as a lyricist and rapper, you know, and then you also are like forward thinking when it comes to as an artist. So why don't you have one of the greatest albums in hip hop ever? I don't understand that about A$AP Rocky. It's like you have all the tools. So all I can chalk it up to is, nigga, you lazy. You just a lazy ass.
Has the creative level of his career musically gone down more than going up?
I think it's been plateauing, like a plateau more than, I don't want to say go down and up because I'm a fan of A$AP and everything I'm saying is coming from I want greatness, right? 100%. I think it's just like he's like, I naturally make creative things and I naturally have an instinct to be a forward thinker. So I think he just rests on that versus like, okay, I'm thinking forward, but let me make sure that this is succinct. Let me make sure it's complete. Let me have the best beats and the best lyrics in a theme. All of this. Let me make sure it's that next level. I don't think he ever goes that far into it. I think he's very a naturalist. I just think he's organic and a naturalist when it comes to how he creates.
Yeah, I mean, I really loved what he broke through with out of the gate. I think the Live Love A$AP mixtape is like one of the best mixtapes of its era. And as far as like any rapper that you could say is like kind of cut from that, you know, early 2010s mixtape sort of Dat Piff era sort of cloth, like I feel like he had one of the best commercial debuts out of all of those artists too, who had much rougher goes when they were like, okay, I need to transition out of this like sort of online download thing into sort of working with a label and so on and so forth. Yeah. And maybe I'm being a bit, like maybe there are some people watching or you guys who would tell me maybe I'm being a bit too charitable, but I feel like A$AP has, you know, maybe in comparison with other artists that are his contemporaries, I feel like he's had an inordinate amount of speed bumps in front of him that have prevented further projects from being quality, be it sort of like A$AP Mob, obviously, like, you know, not being what it was at one point, and the death of A$AP Yams, and you know, what happened with him legally in Sweden, and this recent trial, and you know, obviously jumping into the path of fatherhood, and so on and so forth. Like, I know there are some artists out there who seemingly similar experiences and similar things haven't stopped from dropping records, but you know, in his specific case, I don't know, you know, if I was a world famous rapper, I know at least half those things would probably stop me from
100%
making
3,000%. I'm not blaming.
If you had a lot going on, arguably.
If you had two little,
but 50 Cent got shot 9 times and went 9 times platinum. So I mean, getting shot 9 times is, I mean, what are we talking about?
Well, what do you mean? He got shot 9 times years before going platinum. If you had 2 little kids, Rihanna.
What do you mean years before? It was like 3 years before he went 9 times platinum.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
You ever been shot 9 times before, Torre?
Obviously not, but it's 2 entirely different points in his life.
Yeah, it's a joke. Go ahead.
Right now, you had,
you know, maybe what's more analogous is Kanye got in a car crash and he put together one of the best rap songs of all time. Right?
Yeah.
You had prison hanging over your head. You have 2 little teeny kids at home. You have Rihanna at home. The ability to focus on making new music for sure would be constrained, right? I can understand why Don't Be Dumb
3,000% agreed
was delayed. And even within that, to what the examples you're giving, he made one of the great music videos of this era in Taylor Swift. Right. So he was still,
I think, the best one. Yeah.
To create, but like, you know, I could see, yes, some people can focus. Kobe gets 81 points when all the bullshit's going on in Colorado. That can happen for some people. Some people fall apart, and understandably so, with like a lot of shit going on. But I think
I think he's also somebody who really cares about his art, and maybe he's just thinking a lot about
little kids at home would probably fuck you up quite a bit more than we even realize.
I think he also cares about the quality of his art a lot, and I think he's you know, and I think these recent singles, you know, even that one with Jessica Pratt that he put out not too long ago that I loved, was one of my favorite tracks of last year. I feel like that's being reflected in the quality of some of the new tracks, and I feel like he's conscious of the fact that it has been a long time, and I feel like he wants this album to be better than his last couple. You know, not to mention that like you know, obviously this wasn't intentional, but for as long as it's been, Testing was a very weird album to kind of leave things on. I feel like a lot of
Yeah.
people, without really kind of fully understanding the greater context of that album, don't really get that that record was just supposed to be almost in a way like a weird experimental side quest where it's like, I'm just going to do a bunch of random shit just to test things out and do some odd
Yeah.
stuff. You know, it's like, I don't think that was supposed to be an album that we were supposed to be lingering on for as long as we have. He's also an artist who at this point, like, as Green was sort of saying, he's like a very forward thinking artist. He's a pioneering artist. But
Mm-hmm.
by that same token, I feel like there's a great amount of nostalgia for like what he originally pioneered on, like that original cloud rap sound. And for him, like, the question is like, do I go back and do I indulge in sort of like the expectations of fans who like may want to kind of go back and like get back into the sound that like made me famous in the first place, or do I stay true to like my original DNA and continue experimenting and trying new things, because that's always the artist he's been consistently.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did shoot him bail with all that stuff, and all those things have to be taxing. But that's like, we're talking about humans and their personal life. I got you, but I'm just talking about the art you put out. Like it's like okay, there's some people have very hard lives and still make great art. Some people don't, and I don't want to make someone's life trivial. Of course, he could just quit making music, and I'm okay with it. You've done enough. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah, he could be on the fucking Rihanna retirement plan.
Exactly.
I mean,
just do whatever you want, bro. You did great things.
You could understand as well as anybody, if you make 20-30 million dollars in your career, that would probably lower your hunger to put out another amazing project, probably, right?
It would,
I mean,
it would completely delete my hunger for music industry anything, right? Me personally, I write music every day. It has nothing to do with anybody. It's like journaling for me, right? So I just make songs. You know what I'm saying? I write raps and I make songs. I probably would still be putting out music and think of things in albums just because I like that conceptually. Doesn't mean I'd actually put it out. I might make an album with my friends and be like, yeah, that was great. Now let me go back with my kids and be in my freaking mansion somewhere. You know what I'm trying to say? And I think a lot of people, I think a lot of artists do that. I know for a fact that's what Andre 3000's got to be doing. I bet you that man got like 17 versions of different type of albums because he's too creative of a person. He's too creative of a person to be like.
He told me he still records.
Yeah.
He still records. He just don't want to put it out.
You just don't want to put it out. And that part I understand. Not putting it out, I completely get.
So, but this is what we're saying. Anthony's trying to get in that having a ton of money dilutes your desire to go hard, and Green is saying dilutes your desire to deal with music industry bullshit.
Facts, easily.
No, I listen. I feel like it really no two artists are the same, and it just sort of depends on what kind of artist you are. Like, some people get into the industry and get into music because they're like, I want to make it, and I want to make a life for myself, and I want to get to a certain level of success, and you know, comfortability with like my finances and so on and so forth, which like isn't wrong. You know, unfortunately, like that's sort of the position that a lot of people sort of like enter into all sorts of entertainment with, because they're like, I'm trying to better my position in life, because unfortunately we live in a society where people are not like, you know, allotted a decent social safety net, so they have to sort of like depend on or sort of hope for some kind of like lottery winning type scenario where they're like, they become the number one sports star in order to put themselves in that position they've always imagined themselves to be in, and not have to worry about, you know, sort of whether or not their bills are paid and so on and so forth. So understandably, in that scenario, a lot of people go into entertainment and music like looking to achieve that, and once they've achieved that, like they're not trying to bust ass like they used to, because they're like, I got what I want. You know,
but I think there's different things there though, competing.
Regardless of how much money they make, they're creative and they want to record and they want to release and they want to put something out just because like it's their outlet and it's the way they communicate with the world, and they can't see themselves operating within the world and communicating with it in any other way. And those types of people are always going to make records regardless of what status they're at.
Well, partly to what you're saying, Talib Kweli said to me, recording artists don't retire. The industry retires you, or the fans retire you. They tell you, we're done listening to you. It's not you. Most people don't get the luxury of saying, I'm out.
Yeah.
The industry retires them first.
No, it's true. And you know, of somebody who is of his era, I could see exactly why he would feel that way. These days, though, conversely, like in the social media era, I feel like almost, and maybe this is just my perception because I'm getting emails all the time of like, this artist is coming back, first record in this amount of time. It's like I feel like nothing dies now. Everybody's always, which I mean, I feel like is one of the obviously cooler things about the current day. You can sort of completely sidestep the industry and put out your own shit if you want. But I mean, for the most part, like, yeah, for a long time, for the majority of the music industry's history, that's exactly what it was. The label or the audience at one point would just kind of decide, well, we're done with you. We're not interested in you enough for you to print 30,000 albums and for us to buy them.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Fantano, thank you so much. Always love talking to you and having you on the show. You are the man. I really appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me on.
3,000%. Thank you so much.
We'll have you
This
back.
has been
Thank
Rap
you
Latte.
so much for coming through.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks, man.